What's good, folks? Family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle Earth, to another edition of Disguised Coverage, the only podcast that gives you an equal amount of blueberries in each muffin, presented by the best pizza in Buffalo, New York, and that is One Pipe Pizza. Find the online menu in the episode show notes, whether here on YouTube or whichever podcasting app or platform you're listening to this show on. I am your host, Anthony Prohaska. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro 2_ANT. Find me on Blue Sky at ProAnt. No underscores there. In this playoff edition, again, of Disguised Coverage, we are here to dive into the Buffalo Bills versus the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship, because of course we are. The Bills get another opportunity to slay the dragon, to defeat their arch rival, I would say at this point, at least from a playoff standpoint. I think what is the new age Manning versus Brady, the rivalry that is kind of centered around quarterbacks and teams that tend to get in each other's way from a regular season and playoff standpoint, but one tends to have the upper hand in the playoffs. That has been the Chiefs. The Bills get the opportunity to exercise those playoff demons against Kansas City by heading into Kansas City, the opportunity to beat them at Arrowhead. Obviously, a very important game for both teams. Winner goes to the Super Bowl, but maybe a little more important for the Buffalo Bills, considering their team history, franchise history, and, everything in totality, but especially as of late with what they've had happen to them. And I say we because I'm not alone in this episode to have this conversation and break down all the X's and O's and scheme and structure pieces of Bills versus Chiefs. I am joined by, for the third consecutive week, Mr. JP Acosta of SB Nation. Folks who don't know, I am superstitious. I'm very superstitious. I'm a little stitious, but no, I am very superstitious. And JP is awesome. I wouldn't have ever had him on the show if he wasn't awesome. And if he wasn't awesome, it would override my superstition. But I'm very happy to welcome him back because he is awesome. We have great conversations. And also, I'm trying to continue to ride this playoff high, this heater that we're on of JP having you on, and the Bills keep winning. So we're going to ride this train until the wheels fall off. I appreciate you taking the time. You are awesome. Welcome to the show for the third consecutive week.
So I actually have a funny story to tell you about superstitions. Back in 2022, when the Jaguars made their playoff run, I was very superstitious to the point where I would not watch Jaguars games, because the last Jaguars game that I watched was the Lions game where Trevor Lawrence got folded in half and almost busted his ankle. So I wouldn't watch games after that. And they kept winning games. So I just didn't watch. It got to the point where against the Jets on Thursday Night Football, I went to the gym instead of watching the game.
There you go.
And then they showed the game on TV in the gym, and I was like, hey, I can't do this. Y'all got to turn it. Got to turn it. Jags make the playoffs, obviously. I decide, I think the demon has been exercised. I'm going to go to the Chargers game. First half of the game, down 27-0. I'm seeing notifications on social media, leave the stadium.
Get
out of your seat. Move. So I do. And I watch the comeback happen from the Bud Light zone. And now I'm convinced that, I cannot go to another game. I can't. That is the absolute pinnacle. I will never be able to go. I did go with my girlfriend last year to the Panthers games, and they did win, which found a new superstition that is, whenever my girlfriend watches, they win. Whenever they don't, they lose. So if you probably couldn't tell based on the way the Jaguars played this year, she didn't watch that many games.
I'm super my wife knows, say she gets up and goes to the kitchen and the Bills score, she'll literally be like, did the Bills score? And I'm like, yeah. And she'll be like, are you going to make me stay in the kitchen? And I'm like, yeah, kind of, yeah. Yep. I've had those moments of especially I'm a Red Sox fan also. And in the 2007 World Series run, I figured out in the ALCS that if I sat cross-legged upright while the Red Sox pitched, laid down on my back with my knees up while they were at bat, things started to turn. And I did that uncomfortably so, game after game, no matter how long an inning would last. My legs would be numb or my butt would be asleep. It did not matter. My lower, it didn't, whatever pain I was in, you have to do it. And I think that's what sports, I wasn't like that when I played. I wasn't like, oh, I got to put my left sock on first. I had a routine of like how I got dressed and what I did. But yeah, I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, like it just clicked for me. And like watching, I'm like, okay, like if they scored and I was sitting up, I'm like, I gotta stay sitting up. Or like if things aren't going good, I'm like, I gotta get off the couch and sit down on the ground. So I always give the office line of like, I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious, but I am like superstitious. And yeah, the first thought, I was telling you offline, the first thought that came into my head is the Bills were starting to like, I was like, okay, because I was like, it's late on Sunday, got to wrangle the guest. And usually I was, telling you this offline as well. And folks in the chat know I have Matt Lane on from the KC Sports Network, who is awesome. Matt and the whole team over there do tremendous work covering the Chiefs, breaking down film, X's and O's. They're great in the offseason for draft stuff as well. And I usually have him on regularly as my Chiefs guest, regular season, postseason, all that. And I was like, man, we've been cooking with JP. The conversations have been great. And I was like, but also, yeah, kind of, they haven't lost when he's been on. So I feel like if it's not broken, don't fix it. And JP, here we are. AFC Championship. You rode with us here for the wild card when the Bills beat the Broncos. You rode with us last week heading into the divisional round for the game that neither fan base cared too much about between Bills and Ravens. The Bills moved past the Ravens. Here they sit. AFC Championship. Bills, Chiefs, high level before we dive into the nitty-gritty and all the details and the matchup-specific elements. What are your initial thoughts on this game? You think of Bills Chiefs. Is it where they are right now? Is it the Chiefs look vulnerable, but they're still the Chiefs, and to be the man, you got to beat the man? Or are you fully feeling like you're riding with them? Or is it the Bills have been the better team? They beat them earlier this year. Where's your head at high level on this game? I feel like there's so many, kind of like what we talked about with the Broncos game and the Ravens game the past couple of weeks. I feel like there's all these mini subplots and narratives, not necessarily in a false or bad way, that are attached to this game, obviously. But when you sit back, 10,000-foot view, think of this game, high level, where's your head go to first?
So you hit on something that I was kind of thinking about high level going into this game, which is every era of the sport. Football is cyclical. So every era of the sport has had their version of Brady versus Manning. And not only Brady versus Manning, but Brady versus Roethlisberger, Brady versus Phillip Rivers, Brady versus Drew Brees.
Brady versus everyone. It's just
Brady versus everyone. Because no matter how you played in the regular season, you still had to go to Foxborough in January.
Yeah.
And it feels like we're getting to the modern age Brady with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And I was making this comparison with some of my friends I work with. It's kind of like Brady, but it's also, Charles Barkley would have rings if it wasn't for Michael Jordan.
Good comp, yeah.
Like it took Jordan retiring for 2 years to Hakeem get 2.
Yeah.
Sean Kemp, Gary Payton would have won rings with the Sonics if it wasn't for Michael Jordan.
Karl Malone, John Stockton, yeah.
The best team in basketball during that time couldn't beat them. So high level, I just feel like this is a really important game for both teams. Just from the perspective of, for the Chiefs, it is no matter how we look in the regular season, you still have to come in and beat us at our best. And for the Bills, it's kind of it's the culmination of everything. Everything that the Bills have tried to become this year and in previous years, morphing their offense to be, I wrote about it earlier this year, they're being a little more Chiefsish, a little Chiefsian in terms of how they approach the game. Everything that they have done and everything that has gone into the molding and development of Josh Allen has come to this moment where this is, I'm not going to say it's the most top-end talented Bills team, but it has the most depth. It has the most complementary. It is the best overall team the Bills have assembled against the weakest Chiefs team that we have seen assembled. But none of it matters because you still have to go in and beat them. So I'm super excited about this game. I actually think there's some really cool points to talk about in this game outside of the quarterbacks, but I'm really excited about it.
It's funny. You and I, when did we, I forget when. It was before I had Mina on. I think you and I spoke in May. maybe April, May or something. It was after the draft. And we talked about kind of like what this Bills offense needed to do going forward. And we talked about league trends, everything. I think that's where I think at the time you talked about like the Chiefsification of the Bills offense is kind of what you like verbalize it as. And it's so funny, to go from that point of that offseason to where we are now in that conversation and like what you just said and the points I want to drill down on because I think they're so accurate. Like we were talking at that point, and I still think even now, like, what does this Bills team look like on paper? And even now, it's not a roster where you're like, oh, look at that name. Oh, look at that name. And it was going into the season, and I remember on the episode, you and I, a lot of our conversation was talking about like Joe Brady, scheme, structure, and we're talking about condensed formations and what you can do to kind of mitigate a weaker supporting cast and a weaker roster and how important the run would be and all these things. And now here we are having this conversation talking about the supporting cast around Allen. And it's not just, well, Allen like dragged all these corpses to the AFC Championship. It is a quality supporting cast. And it may not look that way individually on paper, but very much. And I remember when we talked about it, this was like a team, especially on offense, that was going to be, the sum of the parts are great, or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts type of deal. And they've really hit on that in every way, shape, and form. And I think it's so funny to see how that conversation has turned from being, man, is this the weakest team around Josh Allen in forever, to it's the strongest or arguably the strongest. And then to juxtapose that with a Chiefs squad that they lost 2 games, but they really only lost 1 game, and it was to the Bills. But we're sitting here having the opposite conversation of like the weakest Chiefs team, or how vulnerable they look, or how susceptible they look to being beaten. They're 15-1 or 16 in this, but not really. So I feel like that the juxtaposition of those two conversations and the journey from the offseason to now makes this conversation even more fun, considering, again, the history between these two teams, but yeah, where they are and just how this season progressed for both of them, kind of out of nowhere, but in different respects and perspectives.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to both teams getting here, and the testament of, so I am notable on social media for saying quarterbacks don't matter. If you assemble a roster that is complementary and can build things around your quarterback to not have him be Superman all the time, that's a really good thing to have. But I think what we're seeing with the Bills and the Chiefs is these quarterbacks matter not only because they're very good, obviously, but they are force multipliers. They can be the point guard of an offense, but also get you a bucket when you need one.
It's like the Derrick Rose type of point guard, where it's just like, dude just takes over the game. You want him to facilitate, cool, or you need him to drive the lane and power dunk on everyone, like, you got it.
Yeah, it's that kind of player that a lot of teams are missing at the position, and these are two of the premier guys at the spot. But something that I've really enjoyed is how both of these teams have grown and how they've morphed their offense to, the Bills being this physical, big group that wants to mash you in the run game, whereas the Chiefs are a West Coast offense enthusiast like fever dream with all the crossing routes and the motion and the leverage and all the quick ways they'll use motion to design leverage for their guys who aren't exactly like dominant at one position. So it's fun to see how these two teams got here and how they're both so similar, but also where the paths diverge.
That's such a good way to put it. And yeah, the Chiefs kind of going back to like the Andy Reid roots of things is super awesome to see, considering like who he is as a coach and where he kind of cut his teeth before becoming the head coach of the Eagles and then moving on to KC. And then, yeah, the Bills one I think is super awesome just from, I feel like I'm name dropping people on purpose and I'm not, but I remember, I think the first time I had Nate Tice on, it was like 2021. And we were talking about the Bills need a pivot, and the pivot was the run game. It's like they don't run the ball enough. They need to run the ball, so on and so forth. And to see like when they really started to hit their heights in 2020 and then going forward with Allen in the pass game, and it was like Diggs and Beasley and John Brown and the smaller type of receivers and everybody that worked within that, to see how they went from that to falling in line with league trends and condensing and going kind of bigger and kind of heavier. And now you're coming into a playoff game. I think, well, I should have looked it up beforehand. I didn't think about it until now. I think that first half against the Ravens, it was like 8 pass attempts to 20 runs.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it was, I remember screenshotting it from the ESPN app, and I was like the Bills have embraced the quote unquote like playoff football, and to see where they are, and it's like, it's not runs where it's, a ton of like read option or more of like the finesse type of runs. It's like, here comes duo 75 times, and we're going to mash you and grind you into a pulp, and then we'll work in some mid zone. But we can work in some cool counter stuff or sprinkle in some power, or we'll do the tackle pull stuff. And then we can do it from condensed with, 12 or 21 or 22, or we can do it out of 11 with Matt Collins and Keon Coleman and even Shakir who can block, or we can put in Reggie Gilliam, whatever we want to do. Or you can spread to still be a bully. You can go spread to run, and then you're still doing that. And everything is just like an at you type of offense. They're mashing you. And to see that evolution from this, like, spread them out, super spread kind of aerial attack to, and again, this isn't like to be like, oh, what have they figured out? They figured out what the rest of the league figured out with like teams like the Lions and the Rams and the Chiefs of, and 49ers, and condensing and how you operate and you win with personnel and formational advantages. But to just see that evolution and considering where they are now, and yeah, like you beat a Ravens team that, you and I talked about it. They were kind of mirrors of one another. And granted, they had different dials and levers turned up in different perspectives, but you outmatched a team that prides itself on outmashing every opponent they face. Like, that is their MO. And you did that in a cold game with snow and flurries and wind and all that stuff. Like, and knowing that they can do that, but then the quarterback is Josh Allen. So like, you're just keeping that, no, I'm chilling. And then as soon, like, if somebody like punches Krillin in the face, bang, he's flipping, he can flip Super Saiyan in an instant. It just makes like their whole evolution and how it's all come together really fun to like track when you started from the past like 3, 4, 5 years type of deal.
It's where a lot of teams, and I'm not just like name dropping teams to, like rag on them, but it's teams like the Dolphins. That's what they're missing. They are missing that level of physicality that the Bills have added. Yeah. They're missing that ability to punch somebody in the mouth in cold weather football games.
Yep.
And I'm not saying like it's the stereotype of South Florida teams or Florida teams can't handle weather. It's not that. It's that team is not built for January football. The Bills have built this offense, starting with the offensive line development. They have built that team for January football games. And just like the Chiefs, who have morphed their defense and morphed the ability to do different things and pull different levers in the offense, these are two teams that are very clearly built to get to this point. And now that we're here, it's like, it feels like the proper culmination.
Yeah, it really does. And I've always felt like you have to, not necessarily, but I feel like certain things have to align for you to kind of get, like Peyton Manning like had to get through Brady and the Pats to get the Colts to the Super Bowl. And even if he didn't, you wouldn't have felt the same unless they beat that team. And I've just kind of felt like if the Bills got to get to the Super Bowl, this iteration of the Bills, you got to get through KC. And also, I think doing it in KC just also makes more sense. Like the scene of 13 seconds and where everything started in the AFC Championship several years ago. It's just like, go into the Dragon's house, slay the dragon at their place, Kirk Cousins style, walk into your trap, take over your trap type of deal. And I still love that. Him saying that will never not be like one of like the top 5 things I've ever heard at a presser ever. Just the way he says it. Yeah, I had a teammate who used to say, walk into your trap, take over your trap. And I was like, did you just...
Putting Kirk Cousins in Atlanta is the NFL's greatest scripting.
Bro.
Like that, if the NFL is scripted because they put Kirk Cousins in Atlanta. That is exactly what they needed.
The only thing would have been better is if he, like, this was all backed up and, like, he was in Atlanta with, like, prime, like, Outcast and, like, Dungeon Family when Atlanta rap was, like, crazy good Atlanta rap, and I would just want to see, like, just the thugification of, like, Kirk Thuggins would have just been so much better.
I need Kirk Cousins to be in a Lil Baby music video.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm hearing. I need him to be in a Young Thug music video. Well, probably not right now because Young Thug got some cases. But
yeah,
I mean, it could be. That probably it could work.
I think him to show up as a character witness for Young Thug, just full circle on trial. Yeah, and I just feel like it made. I forgot how we got here. Oh yeah, I just feel like it makes sense like that. Certain things align for the storybook type of deal. And so you got the Chiefs, another opportunity to exercise the demons. You do it in KC. But obviously, all the actual X's and O's and the non-emotional narratives make this game so much better, aside from just, these two awesome quarterbacks and so on and so forth. And that is what we will be diving into in this episode. For folks who are unfamiliar or unaware, what we're going to do now in the meat of this episode, the crux of this episode, myself and JP are each going to give our top 3 matchups that we think will decide Bills versus Chiefs this Sunday in the AFC Championship. He doesn't know my answers. I don't know his. And they could be anything. They could be very wide scale and overarching. They could be small, detailed, niche pieces like a specific player against another player or a specific coaching element. Anything and everything is available and on the table to be talked about. If you are joining us live on this episode, that is tremendously awesome. Please let us know what your thoughts are, what you think the top matchups will be, what you think of our matchups, if you think they're terrible, if you think they're awesome. Questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, I will bring up from the live chat as much as possible. Super chats obviously get a priority because 1, I respect the monetary donation. 2, I also see the color that attracts my eyes and bring those up accordingly. And as soon as I said that, Carl, who's been crushing it with super chats the last several weeks. Carl, thank you very much for being here once again and for the super chat once again. Carl says, we have seen Fred Flintstone and the beach surfer dude. The big question is, how will Mac Hollins walk into Arrowhead Stadium? Maybe as Ozzy Osbourne. This has kind of been like Mac Hollins just becoming this like Bills folklore legend this season, starting in training camp and going all the way through. I do wonder, like what kind of the fun little antics of like before the game, like how does he walk into the stadium? What do we see him do? What is he dressed as? How barefoot is he? Is he rocking just like a pair of shorts and no shirt? He's become like a fan favorite in a quick hurry, in a quick minute.
I ain't gonna put on some Darren socks. I'm sorry. He gonna give me anxiety, man. As someone who has asthma, who cannot be in cold weather very much, or they will get sick. Please put some socks on, man. You gonna get sick out there.
Please, Mac. You're killing JP. Please
you're killing me. You're killing me, man. Every time. I respect the Fred Flintstone and I respect the surfers, the Zubaz shorts. I get it. Yeah. I get it. But please put on some socks. Don't even put on socks. Put on some slides or something.
Yeah, just
some flip flops.
Put something on your feet.
Put something on your feet.
You don't know what damage you're doing to me. Please.
I sound like my mama. She put some shoes on when you go outside.
What do you think this is? Put some damn shoes on.
Some damn shoes on.
You gotta give JP a heart attack. I like that. Thank you very much, Carl. That's a very good comment. And appreciate the super chat. JP, your old hat at this as of this point, because again, I tell myself every time, and I tell myself to tell myself every time, I forget what appearance this is for you. It's another continuation in your record setting, obviously 3 straight, but your old hat at this process. You are up first. The stage is yours. Feel free to lead off with whatever matchup piece you choose.
So I'm going to start with the obvious here. I'm going to start with 2 guys on the Chiefs offense that have really kind of stood out since the last game they've played against each other. And it's Xavier Worthy and Travis Kelce. And I think the Xavier worthiness of the offense has kind of been the thing that's kind of piqued my interest a little bit. So the last time the Chiefs played the Bills in week 11, Xavier Worthy had 25 routes run and had 5 targets. Since then, he has had games of 35 routes run, 36, 27, 29, 32. He's seen 11 targets in a game. His role and his growth in the offense has gotten to the point where he is a key cog. And we talked a little bit earlier about how the Chiefs offense is just this super hyper West Coast offense. He is the speed element, but it's not a speed element in the way that you would think. It is not just speed down the field, because that's what Hollywood Brown is for. It is speed across the field. It is crossing routes. It's the RPOs. It's the runs that are just tagged with a bubble. that Patrick Mahomes can just read for leverage. There was some really cool stuff they pulled out against the Texans that I thought would almost work. There was on the first drive, this one was the Hollywood Brown, but the little out and up in the red zone on third down, that was really cool with Hollywood Brown out of a stack alignment. There was one where they motioned Xavier Worthy into the backfield and motioned him out, where you think like most teams run a choice route, but it's an out and up. And Xavier Worthy makes a great catch. One of the greatest catches he made all season.
It was really nice,
It's like a back shoulder. He's fighting through contact, which for him at like 160 pounds is something he doesn't really do.
It was a nice hands catch too, like where he made that. And then also wasn't like 2 plays later, isn't that when like Will Anderson dragged him down by his collar?
Yeah, Will Anderson kind of big broed him. It's like, all right, fun's over here. But Xavier Worthy has such a unique role in this offense where his threat of speed is a problem. It's not Tyreek Hill, obviously, but anytime he touches the ball, you think that he could take it for a touchdown. It's the jet motion. It's the fakes to Xavier Worthy. That was a really cool play that I thought that they would come back to, and they did, but I think Worthy dropped it. It was this return motion into an RPO where they would have him run in motion and then return, come back out the same way that he did on like a little bubble screen. And he dropped it, but you can see the leverage and just the threat of, oh my God, this guy's going in coverage. This guy's going in motion. Everybody flip. Like everybody go. And how this works with Travis Kelce in concert is that threat of speed pulling you away and that speed pulling you out of your zone horizontally allows for Travis Kelce to kind of just, I don't say Travis Kelce runs routes. He kind of just vibes.
Yeah, he's like freelance vibes. That's such a good way to
freelances. Put it. He is the best. He's one of the best tight ends I've ever seen, but also one of the most frustrating receivers I've ever seen because you don't know what route he's running. He just kind of just runs towards gaps.
And he just like sits in space, like he's like, this feels good, and he just sits and he's wide open by like 15 yards. And it's not
even just like running to gaps. It's what he does. Like the best way I can describe it is where you think the hole in the zone is going to be, where Travis Kelce is going to sit, he's going to go to the place that you just left to go cover the hole that you think is there. Like he's gotten to the point where he's not just out athleting people. He's just finding those voids and those holes in zones. And I think for the Bills defense, especially if Taron Johnson, who got banged up during the game, if Taron Johnson can go, it adds very much to that defense. But just how they handle the motion and all of the Chiefs are really good at throwing the jab. They're gonna jab you. They're gonna jab you. They're gonna keep hitting you. Little light taps. Make sure you're still focusing on the bubble screen, on the crossing routes, on the little Travis Kelce just kind of vibe over the middle of the ball. And then that's when you're gonna get like the downfield shot, the Hollywood Brown that should have been caught, where he just outruns both people in quarters. And Mahomes puts it right there until they just kind of lull you to sleep. It's I saw that we didn't have an anime reference yet. It's the Dempsey roll from Hajime no Ippo, where he's gonna weave, and you think like, what is he doing? And then bam, he's hitting you with this right hook. As soon as you think that they don't have it, as soon as you think they're just gonna keep peppering you with motion, keep testing you. And that's what they do so well. They test your rules and communication. And there were so many times where the Texans were like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Like, especially in the middle of the field. They were like, oh, no, all this motion. I got to run this way. And then Travis Kelce's just like, okay. Like, I'm just going to run right where you left. So it's really Kelce and Worthy that kind of stir this drink.
As soon as you mentioned when we were talking about the high level pieces and you talked about kind of like the West Coast aspect of like Reid and doing everything to like out leverage defenders and defenses, the first thing that came into my mind was all the horizontal. Oh man, we're still early on and that's a huge flub. Horizontal leverage that they were creating for Xavier Worthy, just with all the little motions and quick little picks and rubs and all the things, like him being used in the high underneath to low intermediate areas of the field. And I feel like that's opened up the offense a little bit and obviously increased his usage. So much of it early on this year was them trying to get him the ball downfield and using him to stretch the field vertically, but also generating opportunities. Like there's at least 5 or 6 that come to my mind where he's wide open downfield and Mahomes either misses him, or there's a couple where like Worthy catches it, but he doesn't get his feet down. Some that were kind of like nonchalant. And you'd be like, dude, how did you not get your second foot down? Did you not know where you were? And it was really looking like, oh, this wasn't a great pick for Kansas City. Like, guys not really showing a lot of refinement or wherewithal for a wide receiver. And yeah, they've just tweaked that usage and leaned into him more. And I just think getting him the ball in these like quick hitting scenarios, not necessarily just like tunnel screens or like the smoke screen stuff or anything like that, but getting him these quick little arrow routes and these flat routes where it's the catch and speed and get upfield and that burst hits immediately. And, you know, you talked about that nice little back shoulder athletic catch against Houston. If he starts to work that in a little bit more, man, like and it's funny that he's starting to come on now because I know it's still in the forefront of every like Bills fans' mind, like the trade and can't believe, you know, we let Kansas City get Xavier Worthy, yada, yada, so on and so forth. Like he and Keon Coleman will be forever linked. Yes, forever linked, forever. And it's just funny too, of course, like Worthy starting to come on a little bit just in time for this game. And even he had a good first matchup against the Bills in week 11. And then I think it was like 4 catches on the first drive or first 2 drives. And then they didn't go back to him for the rest of the game. He was cooking. He was finding space. His speed was a problem. We've seen Troy Franklin is running through quarters against the Bills for Denver. Like Worthy's got that speed and then some. Like you can really get on the heels of Rapp and Hamlin. We'll see if Rapp plays in this game. But yeah, just how they've been able to incorporate him more. And then you put that in conjunction with Travis Kelce, DeAndre Hopkins, you're starting to work in Hollywood Brown. You have the run game pieces. You've got the other tight ends and supporting cast pieces. Like it's funny how just that little tweak has made all the puzzle pieces fit a little better and has made them that much more difficult to defend down the stretch. And really, as they've turned it up on offense for the last like 6-7 weeks.
Yeah, and I think even in the run game, that Worthy motion causes so much problems. There are a couple reps of what I believe was same side split zone out of gun by the Chiefs, which is diabolical, by the way. Like you think terrible of a split zone run, and it's the tight end cutting back across as the running back goes this way. But no, it is the running back is here and the tight end is here, and they're both going the same way. And Henry Toto, I feel so bad for him because he just was so lost.
He was in hell.
There was a play, same side split zone. Xavier Worthy goes in jet motion. He bumps out. Same side split zone happens. Kareem Hunt winds it back towards him. He cuts back in. Then then Kareem Hunt jumps out. He jumps out. He
like
just got him playing like whack-a-mole.
Snip, snap, snip, snap,
yes.
snip, snap.
Yes, he's just going back and forth. And then he finds himself on the wrong side of Trey Smith, and Kareem Hunt runs for 11 yards. And it's just that kind of stuff where the Chiefs motion they use motion to gain leverage and motion for picks and rubs. They're not using motion to get speed. They're using it to get advantage and angles. Offense is a lot about angles and geometry. If you have the angle on somebody, you'll probably win in an offensive matchup. So I think for the Bills defense, it is communication. Their communication is going to be stressed a lot in this specific game.
And we've seen, you and I talked about it going into the similar. I could say this so much because you've been on so much this season. Going into that Bills-Rams game, we talked about leverage and especially the horizontal leverage stuff outside the numbers and in a similar aspect and using motion to create that and to create this easy, advantageous, almost kind of like easy button or automatic like layup for Stafford and how he's able to see the field. Mahomes can operate. I shouldn't even say to that. Mahomes is obviously Mahomes. But when Matt Stafford is on, man, like the ultra instinct level of Matt Stafford is just crazy. How he sees the field and what he can do is nuts. So I don't want to say that Mahomes is that or Stafford is Mahomes, but you get a similar aspect. And we've seen the Bills struggle with offenses like that. You know, Miami usually does it in the run game, but can do it in the pass. The Rams did it more from a pass perspective, but also did it in the run. These teams that will use motion to put the Bills second level in hell. And then similarly, you're trying to figure out, okay, do we bump with this motion? okay, and then the teams that get really diabolical with it, Miami is great at this from a run game perspective. They'll use that motion, and it's almost like as soon as Tua sees the second level react, like, and they move this way, he's snapping the ball, and then the run's going the other way. Like, they time it. So as soon as you step right, now they've created that extra half a step for their linemen to climb to the second level and be in better position to seal you off. And you nailed it, like, from the angles perspective. I feel like I say it so many times throughout the season. Like, football is all about numbers, angles, and space. And it all comes down, like geometry and math and algebra and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, if we've got 6 in the box, how many do we have out? I mean, the good example, the touchdown to Terry McLaurin, the long house call that made it 17-14. That's purely just numbers. Jaden Daniels looks outside of that RPO and is like, there's one guy out there for like 3 dudes. So I'm just going to throw to where the numbers are. Like, that's it. And sometimes it's purely about just numbers. Sometimes it's about the angles. Sometimes it's about the space. In that instance, it was the numbers and the space. We're going to the wide side of the field, and there's only and we have the numbers advantage. Oh, I'm just spitting it out there real quick, and we'll see what we can get. And the Chiefs have always been adept at kind of manipulating that aspect. And again, I think it ties in funny to the Bills defense, because when they get attacked, it's usually from a leverage perspective. In the run game or in the pass game, you see them out of position, or just they'll read it right, or they have a good coverage, but because they're a half step inside, they're not able to get over the top, or they go underneath instead of going over the top, and then somebody's open. And when you've got guys like Worthy and Hollywood Brown with that kind of speed, and then the opportunity to react or overcommit to that speed, and Travis Kelce to just do his vibe stuff and find space, it's just unreal. I was watching something, I think this past offseason, it might have been the tight end university thing, and he was talking about, and he was giving examples, like breaking down with the clicker on the projector on film, and he was talking about it's not enough just to know coverage tendencies for defenses. You have to know how they like to use certain coverages. Like, okay, so are they a cover 2 team? Is it an actual cover 2, or is it more of a Tampa 2? How do they spin to it? What is their, the pole runner like to do? How deep does he like to get? Talking about all the intricacies and nuances, and seeing him and just how vibey he is on the field. I really think it's because he sees everything at such a high level, and he studies so much film that it looks like I feel like he just knows where dudes are going to be. And so it's very just like, la, la, la. Okay, let me sit. And it's always like he's moving at like a quarter speed. And it's like, how is he getting open? But he's
moving like half speed. It's so annoying sometimes, because it's like, how do you miss a guy that's 6'5" and moves at like half speed, like a YouTube video? But I think you hit it on the head. It is, he played quarterback at Cincinnati before moving to tight end. He sees the game like a quarterback. It's not only how they like to get to Tampa 2. It is who they're putting as the pole runner. It's who is in this hook the curl area, which is what they hammered against the Texans. They just hammered Azeez Al-Shaair with a little under route, a little shallow, and then Travis Kelce going right behind him. And it's, you better pick one. And most of the time, if he's going to bite the cheese on the shallow, Travis Kelce is going to be open. So I think a lot of it, I think this game is going to come down to how comfortable the Bills are in man against them. I know the Bills played a lot of odd mirror, which I think will be pulled out against the Chiefs.
Yeah.
But it's how comfortable you are in man coverage against this Chiefs team, where, like, I don't think they're great against man coverage, but I also don't think you can sleep on the man coverage, because this is where DeAndre Hopkins comes in. He only ran like 18 routes against the Bills last time because he was like 4 weeks in, but his play has started to constantly come up. It is now, it's the Xavier worthiness of it all, with the kind of the underneath stuff that he can do with his speed. It's the Hollywood Brown downfield. It's not an offense that is super explosive, but it has layers. And just like how I say with the Bills offense, the Bills passing game is more explosive than the Chiefs, but they have more layers. There are more layers to this team than how normal offenses are run. They have guys who win deep. They have guys who can separate. They have Travis Kelce, who kind of just does what he does. So I think for the Bills, it's communication and if you can win in man coverage.
It's always funny with like the Bills and the man coverage piece. I'm always wondering like how much do they uptick in it? And Kansas City is always like a fun one because my theory not theory, but like my coaching point every time I'm facing Kansas City is like just beat the hell out of Travis Kelce. Press him, jam him, beat the hell out of him, and hopefully by the fourth quarter he kind of wears down. And I feel like that still applies to him, maybe even more so now. But also even these Chiefs receivers, like beat the hell out of Worthy, beat the hell out of Brown. Hopkins would probably invite that. Like if you want to press Hop and fight Hop, he's very willing to be like, okay, cool. Like let's fight because he's physical. He'll kind of play that game. And I do wonder, how much man they play. And then pairing that with press because we saw them getting into some press against Denver. We saw them get into some press against Baltimore. We saw them work in varieties of, for folks watching, JP's fixing some stuff. Got some technical issues there. Focusing on aspects of kind of locking one side of the field with man, incorporating some press a little bit. Some pieces that I think could apply to this game. Oh, I see. Mac is getting so Mac says, you guys are awesome, but it's time to take down the Christmas tree. So as some folks in the chat let you know, so the big tree stays up pretty much for November, December, and January. The little tree stays up all year round once. And as Sarah says in the chat right now, he decorates in different ways. So this is just a little gold and silver tree just because, January, New Year. Once the big tree goes down, the little tree goes over there. And then I decorate it with garland and themes that represent whatever holiday we are currently in. So for February, it'll be hearts and red stuff for Valentine's Day. Green will be St. Patrick's Day. April is pastels and eggs for Easter. All of those things. See, now Matt gets, he says, I changed my mind. Trees are awesome. There you go. See, good job, chat. I appreciate everyone in the chat. This is fair from RJ. He says the big tree needs to stay up as long as the Bills keep winning. Absolutely. There is nothing behind me that will change as long as things, I don't even want to say the words because I'm scared of it. There is nothing behind me that will change as long as we continue down this path. And I like where Sarah's head is at. She says, I personally like the Easter tree, soft, pretty colors. I think that's the right way to go. All right. So JP is fixing some things on his end. I am going to power on while he fixes those things. Actually kind of drop him down at this point while he fixes those things. So let us, oh man, I do this every week, whether with a guest, whether with not. All right, I'm going to start with this one. So I've talked a bunch this year on social, actually even the past couple of weeks, and talking about Josh Allen's ability to mitigate pressure turning into sacks. He was the best quarterback in that regard this year, but this overall theme of how that ties into my first point here of which defense can pressure and get home versus the opposing quarterback. So some numbers real quick. Josh Allen, out of 44 qualifying quarterbacks in the regular season, he had the lowest percentage of pressures converted to sacks at 8%. Pat Mahomes was 29th out of the 44 QBs, 29th in a good way. You want to be lower at 17%. But that 17% for Mahomes, that was his highest pressure converted to sack percentage of his entire career. His previous high was 12% in 2021. Aside from that 2021 season, he hasn't had a pressure to sack percentage higher than 11.5. Year in and year out, he is one of the best, if not the best, at now not allowing pressures being converted to sacks. And even if you don't know about the numbers, I got to stop because we got a super chat. Thank you very much for being here, Jason. And thank you very much for the super chat as well. Jason says, had to donate to remind everyone to never disrespect the Christmas tree. It's not just a Christmas tree. It is a tree of life, and Aunt's wife puts work into it. Don't disrespect life or Aunt's wife, please. I appreciate you, Jason. I'm also going to give you a clap. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for being here, again, regularly as you are, and for the super chat, and for defending the tree and the effort that my wife puts into it in decorating it and the background. So I appreciate you very much for this. This is fantastic. Yeah, Dan, I know you just joined. JP had technical difficulty. He's fixing the back. He will be back shortly, but I'm powering on in his stead. That was very good, Jason. I appreciate you for that. So continuing with those pieces. So Mahomes regularly, year in and year out, is one of the best, if not the best, at not allowing pressures be converted to sacks. And even if you don't know the numbers, just think about it with your eyes. How many games have you seen with the Chiefs where somebody gets in, Mahomes gets pressured, he escapes, he makes some throw under pressure, or he does his little duck walk, and gets the first down, extends the ball, or acts like he's going to go out of bounds and keeps going forward. We've seen him time and time again kill teams with his ability to evade and not allow pressure to turn into sacks consistently. And that aspect of his game has been huge. Allen has been tremendous in that way as well, but usually Mahomes bests him by 2 to 3, 4 percentage points close. This is the first year where Allen has trumped him, and again, by a significant margin. Allen, again, lowest in the league at pressures converted to sacks at 8%. Mahomes more than double that at 17%. But if we go further and talk about, again, this aspect of defenses pressuring the QB and whether or not they're able to get home, let's bring him back to the stage. What do we got?
I think it's working now. Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
My podcast setup, the battery died, so I was scrambling a little bit.
No, you're good. I heard the click and I saw it go out and I was like, oh, and then as soon as the camera went down, I was like, hey, he's got to fix it, but you're all good. You're all good. We're in a good spot. So kind of recap, fill you in. My first point that I'm leading off with here, which defense can pressure the QB and get home? So kind of fill you in, recap some quick pieces. Allen, we talked about the past couple of weeks. Out of 44 qualifying QBs in the regular season, lowest percentage of pressures converted to sacks at 8%. Mahomes, 29th out of the 44, in a good way. Lower is better, but he was at 17% pressures converted to sacks. That's his highest pressure converted to sack percentage of his entire career. His previous high was 12% in 2021. Aside from that season, he hasn't had a pressure to sack percentage of higher than 11.5%. He's usually the one that gets in Allen's way of being the king of that metric year in and year out. It's usually Mahomes, but Allen bested him significantly this year. Continuing that conversation in terms of pressure, getting home, scrambles overall, Josh Allen, 7th in scrambles with 41. Patrick Mahomes was 13th with 36. EPA per scramble, Patrick Mahomes was first. We talked about this last week. First at 0.85, which is unreal. Almost a full point added per scramble, which is nuts. Josh Allen was third at 0.69. So Allen, really good numbers. Mahomes just out of this world. Scrambling success rate, Pat Mahomes, second at 75%. Josh Allen, first, 75.6%. Scrambling EPA, Mahomes was second at 30.58. Allen was third at 28.41. Also, for reference, Jaden Daniels was first at 46.23, which is just ridiculous. Granted, he had way more attempts. He was in like the 70s. He led in scrambles, which makes sense given his game. And then another little piece, big time throws under pressure. For those who don't know, a big time throw is a pass with excellent ball location and timing, generally thrown further down the field and or into a tighter window. This is per PFF. This is one of their metrics I really like. Allen is first in big time throws under pressure with 17. Mahomes tied for 8th with 10. If we look at it from a percentage standpoint, Allen is first in big time throw percentage under pressure at 11.1. Mahomes is tied for 17th at 5.6, so more than double. The aspect of these two quarterbacks that we are going to see, and we see it all the time, Mahomes gets pressured. Do you get him down? What he did to Houston, right? After he flops on the sideline, the very next play he's getting brought down and he throws it off, and somehow Azeez Al-Shaair loses Travis Kelce, and then Kelce's wide open because, again, Kelce's vibes and he finds the space because he always does. But that ability right there, Mahomes to shake someone, do his little duck walk, scramble for a first down, or make a ridiculous throw. Allen doing similar things, stiff-arming defensive tackles, shaking defensive linemen in a variety of ways, in a variety of styles. Both of these QBs are hard to pressure, but even more so, once you pressure them, it's very hard historically to get either of them down. Allen even more so this year with the numbers he's putting up. And so that's my first piece here. Can you pressure these QBs? And if you do, can you get them down? Part of the reason why the Bills started using that odd mirror package, they first rolled it out a couple years ago against Kansas City, and they've used it against other teams. They used it against Baltimore a bit last weekend. They used it on the first third down of the game against Baltimore, and Lamar broke it. Like Milano went to close on Lamar, and Lamar was just like, skirt, and went out the back door and scrambled for the first. But they used that against Mahomes to get him off the spot and then close down on him with that aggressive spy. He's the guy that they didn't invent it. Georgia was already doing it, but he was the one that they first started implementing it because of him killing them year in and year out with scrambles. They couldn't maintain rush lane integrity. They couldn't collapse the pocket. So I think so much of this game ties into that piece of, can you pressure the QBs? And if you do pressure them, can you get home? And if you don't, how much do they kill you? Is it with their legs? Is it with their arm? Because Allen will do both. Mahomes is more with the legs. Allen's depth of target is like 14 under pressure. Mahomes is 10. Still decent for Mahomes, but yeah, these two can gut you in a variety of ways with scrambling and when they're under pressure.
And I think the biggest thing for the Chiefs is how they can get pressure now that Charles Omenihu is back. And I think Charles Omenihu being back, he didn't play against the Bills in the regular season. He came back around like week 13, week 14. I think with Charles Omenihu being back, the pressure stuff makes a whole lot more sense because it allows for Spags to play Chris Jones ISO ball. And that is where you don't want to be. No. If you're the Bills offense, you don't want to give Spags and the Chiefs a way to isolate Chris Jones on your weakest pass protector. We all saw what he did to Blake Fisher, who was a rookie right tackle. That's not a spot where you want to be at. That is, again, we make it like the NBA. That's like putting like, oh gosh, I don't want to slander anybody's name here, but that's like the Miami Heat, like the LeBron dunk on Jason Terry in Boston.
Nice.
Like that, you're setting him up for that. And that's what the Chiefs can do. Now with Charles Omenihu back, they can get into more overload fronts like the Texans do. But instead of the Texans doing that to free up their edge rushers and Will Anderson Jr. and Daniil Hunter, the Chiefs are doing it for a 315-pound defensive tackle who moves like somebody 30 pounds, 40 pounds lighter. And I think with Omenihu being back, George Karlaftis playing really well, they can design so many different things. And that's something that hurt the Bills in last year's playoffs, where some of the designs were able to get Chris Jones free. But when you look at what the Chiefs are this year, they allow a 0.37 EPA on scrambles, which is 12th in the NFL. Like, it's not bad, but it's 0.37. It's not like this is like incredible levels. So I think a large part of that is how much man coverage they'll play on those downs. But I wonder how much man coverage they'll play in this game with Josh Allen deciding against man coverage. He's just going to scramble and throw it a mile. So I wonder how much man coverage they'll play, especially because, you know, what they'll do is they had a crazy rep against Houston where they're in the low red zone, third down, and they show a blitz with the safety, but they spin it into one double on Nico Collins, where they just run the safety right into that little low hole where all the Nico Collins slants and over routes and in breakers, like we know what you're going to do. And then put McDuffie on Xavier Hutchinson. So I wonder if you get a little bit of, and I think where the Chiefs sort of differ from the Ravens is I don't think they have a Brandon Stevens. You know, I don't think they have that portion of their defense where they have all these good players, but one noticeably bad one. They have a bunch of quality corners, especially now with Jalen Watson being back.
I would say that first game he was out. It was Najee Johnson in that first one, and that was a difference significantly.
Now Jalen Watson gives him a lot more size at corner and allows McDuffie to play a little bit more chess piece. You might see him on Khalil Shakir a lot. So how they blitz without getting how they pressure without blitzing is going to be the big thing. And if you can keep the Chiefs from playing ISO ball with Chris Jones, because as well as the Bills' interior offensive line has played, that is not a matchup you want. That's not something you want to go into the game like, okay, we're fine leaving Chris Jones one-on-one, because he is going to dominate the game from that perspective. And we have seen him dominate Bills games before by just ISOing. And I, as a Jaguars fan, I have seen Chris Jones ISO ball. I vividly remember him going ISO for like half the game against a rookie right tackle and Anton Harrison. And I'm like, well, I don't know, man. Good luck.
I give up.
So it's that from the Bills offense perspective. From their defense perspective, I think there's gonna be a lot of odd mirror. If Benford and Taron Johnson are both healthy and playing, that allows them to play a little bit more man coverage. But again, you worry a little bit if neither of them are healthy. This might become a DeAndre Hopkins bully ball game, where DeAndre Hopkins is a little bit weird in this offense, where as the Chiefs kept getting bigger, his snaps have kind of dwindled, but he's still like I'm just coming up with basketball references today.
I love
He's
him.
like Ray Allen when he got to the Heat, where
Okay.
like he's a little bit older, a little bit long in the tooth, not exactly a primary option. But if you leave him open in the corner, he's gonna hit you for 20
I'll
points.
say, yeah, tell the Spurs in the dwindling seconds of whatever game 7 or whatever,
Yeah,
and then
like
in OT, yeah.
in game 7, you don't want to leave him open. So you don't want to like devote all your attention to DeAndre Hopkins because he's clearly not the focal point of this offense. But you can't just say you're going to leave him on an island because DeAndre Hopkins lives on that island. He lives in those 7-yard stop routes, those comebacks.
Yeah.
It's the slants where that's their outside option.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how which team breaks serve against these quarterbacks when it comes to pressure.
That's a fair point. And I those little things are like what creeps into my brain for like, oh, of course. Like I keep thinking how reliant the Bills defense has been on takeaways. And I keep waiting for it to like regress to the mean, and it doesn't. And I'm like, oh, of course, when it'll regress to the mean? Against Kansas City, and they'll have no takeaways. Or I think of like, when DeAndre Hopkins is going to have like a 12 catch, 180-yard game, it'll be like this week. But he's still got that in him. Like you can't get too lax and think like, okay, like we can forget about him. He could still win a one-on-one. He could still function in those areas underneath, especially in this offense and how they're schematically designed. Yeah, that's a very good point. Was that just a point, or was that one of your actual points?
That was just a point. I was going through so many different points for this game, and one of the small ones was Charles Omenihu being back and the ability to design games, because I think against the Texans they had like 8 unblocked pressures.
Yeah,
dude. But it was some insane number where the Texans Shanahan offenses are weird because they don't let the quarterback set the protection.
Yep.
It's the center.
Yep.
So you found a lot of times where Dalton Schultz was blocking George Karlaftis. I don't think that's going to happen with Buffalo, but the Chiefs just know how to poke holes.
Yep.
And their offense is very reflective of their defense. They can just jab you every single down. They're just going to throw something at you. See if you like it, see if you don't like it, and then if you don't like it, they're just going to keep hammering it in different ways. So the pressure aspect and how Omenihu being back, getting Karlaftis playing well, they can do so many different games and designs up front that you worry a little bit about the third down, the third and medium aspect of it, third and medium, third and longs.
And I think too, like that's where obviously you get into like the Spags designer stuff in third and longs and what he's doing up front with coverage. But I think he taps into the personnel that they have defensively so well. Like there's 3 safeties on the field. Sometimes there's 4. And then it's like, how many down linemen are on there? Where's Leo Chenal? What are we doing with Bolton? What are we doing with Tranquil? Like, where's Karlaftis? Okay, where's Chris Jones? Oh, he's lined up in a 5 tech. Oh, now he's a 1 tech. Now he's he can take these guys and push different buttons and pull different levers, all within the structure and scheme and situation. And he has this uncanny knack for consistently doing it in like big moments where you just know you're going to get put in hell. Like you very rarely see a moment where you're like, oof, like Spags got too creative on that one and it really bit him for this entire game. Like you might get him for a couple plays. And this is one of my points that I'll mention later, but he knows what to tap into regularly. And I think he would do that even, to a decent degree from a success standpoint, even if he didn't have these body types, but he does have these body types and it increases the deception and what you have to account for. Because you're sitting there trying to figure out like, okay, what coverage are they going to spin to? Because there's like 9 safeties on the field. So who's going to do what? Like what's going to happen? Like what, you've got McDuffie who can play inside, who can play outside, who can play man, who's a really good blitzer. Like all these. So, okay, where's the pressure coming from? Who's dropping? Who's doing what? And I said it with the first time the Bills played the Chiefs, but one of my main points then was, can you get Spags before Spags gets you? Especially when he brings these exotics and gets creative, like somebody's open. If they're dropping Mike Dana into coverage, that's an opportunity you can exploit. But are you recognizing that Dana's the one that's dropping? Are you able to gum up any of the pressure? Is there a free runner coming? Are they bearing down on you? Are they heating you up just to force a short throw underneath so they can rally and tackle? Like, there's so many layers, and I feel like so much of it is like playing a game of chicken against Spags, of him being like, if you get me, cool, but I think I can get you more than you get me, and it's just a matter of who gets got more. And that chess match and the back and forth, yeah, it's just so intense because of how Spags is. But then the body types that he has with Kansas City makes it so much more complicated than it already is schematically. Like, it just enhances that next level. And yeah, it puts you in absolute hell. That's a really good point. I like that kind of sub point. All right, what is your second matchup point that you want to dive into?
So this is a bit general, and for the folks that know me, you know I was going to bring it up. But how the Bills run the ball against the Chiefs? And I
almost did that, and I told myself I don't need to because I know JP is going to do it, and we can talk about it then.
I thought the Texans' game plan against the Chiefs in the run game was actually really good. They had a 50% success rate against the Chiefs on the ground. It was insane. Joe Mixon had one of the best games of the playoffs, of his playoffs career, against the Chiefs in the run game. Wow. And where they did it was in two specific ways I thought was interesting. It was 11 personnel. The first one was 11 personnel. It's a Shanahan offense. They didn't have a lot of their bigger guys on the field without having Brevin Jordan. They didn't really get into a lot of the beefy stuff. But out of 11 personnel, the Texans had a 0.45 EPA per carry against the Chiefs, which is really good. And the reason I thought this was interesting was because of how the Chiefs defended it. First play of the game, I think they're in a little bit bigger personnel, and the Chiefs do what they normally do, walk Leo Chenal up as like a de facto 3-tech. I say all the time, it's like a joke. Leo Chenal is one of the best 3-techs in the NFL because that's basically what they do with him.
I mean, that's the best, like his best reps at Wisconsin were like coming. I remember him blowing up Tyler Linderbaum with Wisconsin versus Iowa. And it was like, yeah, man, if you can, and he uses him, Spags uses him as that sub package blitzer to like cause havoc, or he'll drop into the little hole, or he'll wrap on a game and a stunt. Like, he just leans into that skill set, which sounds like, oh, of course he does. But a lot of guys don't do that.
And a lot of things with Chenal, which I also think could be an interesting point for this game when you talk about pressure, was Chenal is the spy. When they do the odd mirror stuff, Chenal is the spy, because against the Ravens, Chenal was the spy. Whenever they play the mobile quarterbacks, it's Chenal who does the blitzing, because Nick Bolton and Drew Tranquil are a little better in coverage. Yeah. But in the run game, they had Chenal walked up as a 3-tech. The Texans ran duo at him, ran for 5 yards. Leo Chenal's great, but that's for zone runs because he can shoot gaps in zone. You don't want to run duo. You don't want to have to defend duo as a 250-pound linebacker walked up as a 3-tech. I also think how they defended it in 11 personnel was interesting because of who was on the field. Mike Pennell wasn't on the field when they were in 11 personnel very often, because Mike Pennell is not a pass rusher. So you have guys like Tershawn Wharton and Mike Dana on the field who are more sub-package pass rushers, but not the 1-tech you need next to Chris Jones. So I wonder how they play that game. And then when they condense it and they want to get big, the Texans had a little bit of success in I formation, which makes you think of one person on the Bills. This is the Reggie Gilliam game. I've been waiting for the Reggie Gilliam game, and I think this is the one. I think the Texans had some really cool reps of duo wrap, where they had wrap a receiver back around, and it kind of caught the linebackers off guard with the misdirection. And I think that's something, because of how the Bills like to run duo, I think that's something they can lean into with Gilliam on the field, especially in I formation, because that's where the Texans really kind of hit the Chiefs hard. You think of the touchdown that they scored with Joe Mixon to go up on the Chiefs. It was out of I formation. They ran duo wrap and he bounced it. And I just think for the Chiefs defense, if they don't have Pennell on the field, you worry a little bit about the run game. And of course, if you don't have Chris Jones on the field because they rotate their tackles, that's a problem. So how the Bills run the ball out of 11 personnel, which has kind of been their thing, because they can run that monster ball 11. I call it monster ball 11 because
that's good.
It's Mac Hollins is not a receiver. He is a defensive lineman cosplaying, wearing number 13. And then you have Dawson Knox, who is a very good blocker. How they can kind of attack this Chiefs run defense out of 11 could really open up a lot of stuff for them when it comes to playing matchup ball. and playing the matchup game, because I think the Chiefs, if they don't want to play Pennell because they're worried about getting like no pass rush from him, like that's the risk you have to make. That's the trade-off.
Oh, that's a good one. And what's nice too is when the Bills go 11. I mean, they could do it out of 12 too, but when they go 11, they'll run duo out of it, and they'll have that kind of like 3-by-1. But then they'll also like jet motion someone across, and then they'll run mid-zone weak. And so it'll be out of the exact same look, the exact formation, but they can run either concept, which are significantly different, even though they have the same similar presentation. And then they'll work in the play action and the layering off it. I mean, even in this game, they ran duo a whole bunch out of that look. And then they're running that, like, I don't know, people call it different things. I never even know what to call it. Like that front side naked type of deal where like it's not play action, but the running back goes to the same side as like the boot and he just takes off for the flat right away. Allen hit it to Ty Johnson.
The sprint out.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. I don't know. I always call it front side naked. I don't know why. And they work that off the duo look. So like Brady will add layers and like spam a formation, alignment, and play, and then turn it into something else. And you're like, just when you got caught up, now we hit you with that. And that's even if they have to get to that, because they can just keep spamming the same look. And if it's working, they'll just keep doing it. And I like the incorporation of Gilliam. I would really like, give me more pistol in this game. I know you like that as pistol advocate. Give me some pistol. Give me some offset pistol with Gilliam. So that way we can get downhill with some stuff, but we can also do some counter stuff. We can do some power stuff. Give me that six. Give me Gilliam and Alec Anderson as the 6 offensive lineman, but put him as an inline tight end. And then give me, send him in that kind of blast motion and then run counter with it, or tie it into play action. And now he's essentially a tackle and it's big on the backside. Or you can leave him in line and go traditional play action, try to push the ball downfield, knowing that you've got, again, big on the line. You don't have to worry about a tight end trying to block whatever edge they have out there. I think that aspect, again, this was one of my points the first time they faced a little bit, but that personnel matchup, because Kansas City, again, you've got Justin Reid, and you've got Cook, and you've got Shamari Connor, and you've got Leo Chenal, and you've got Bolton, and you've got Tranquil, and you've got these defensive line pieces, and you've got McDuffie. You've got all these guys where like they can kind of live in all these different waters. Like if you want to go big, they can go big. If you want to go light, they can go light. Like they can go dime in a variety of looks with a variety of guys, like on the back end, let alone the front combinations. It's such a fun chess piece. I feel like we could literally just do a whole episode on personnel versus personnel for the Bills offense versus Chiefs defense, because of how multiple the Bills are, but the Chiefs are equally multiple because of what they have. And it's just like, who pushes the right button at the right time or pulls the right lever at the right time? And I mean, Chenal is the good example, right? Like, how do you weaponize him? How do the Bills weaponize Reggie Gilliam? How do the Chiefs answer? How do the Bills, and you just go back and forth. The Bills can go with the heavy personnel, but also then spread you out and go with a 3-by-2 and put Gilliam out and do different things. Like that give and take and back and forth, I think, is a really cool piece.
And I think the way the Chiefs defend these multiple personnel is kind of how they've been so good, because they've drafted these guys. Like something that the Chiefs did against the Texans when they would have 11 personnel, but it'd be sort of condensed with either Robert Woods or Xavier Hutchinson close to the line. They just have Shamari Connor walk up and basically be the edge, and he would just fly in and make tackles. He would try and cause some havoc. Something else that they would do is they would get into that 5-1 front, which is something that the Bills ended up running against the Ravens, where they would walk Chenal, instead of walking him up as a 3-tech, they walk him up on the edge.
Yeah, like a Sam.
Yeah, he got blown off the ball as a 3-tech, and then Spags was like, "Yeah, we're never doing that again.
Get outside.
Game. Let's put you on the edge," and then they'll walk Tranquil up on the other side so they can get to a 6-1 front out of their nickel personnel. And they just have so many guys who can wear different hats. You talked about Justin Reid, who can do a little bit more of the stuff in the box. Trent McDuffie is really good at nickel and outside. Tamari Connor has kind of been the hammer nickel role, where they'll play him. They play a lot of dime, which is, again, I think it's funny to say because Trent McDuffie is awesome, but I think they have the most underrated defensive back group in the league because of how versatile they can be and how good they are at tackling. Like they are monsters as tacklers, but that opens up so many different avenues for you. And they can play Brian Cook, who's dealt with injuries. Jaden Hicks is a rookie who's played well. So how the matchups go in the run game is really going to dictate where both teams go. Because, again, we saw with the Ravens, if you can't stop the Bills up front, you're probably not going to win that game. And Josh Allen will be playing a handoff simulator where he's going to give the ball up. Like it doesn't matter because he'll just get 6 yards of play.
And I think that makes this iteration of the Bills offense so much more dangerous than previous ones, because it's not like, okay, we ran the ball enough, let's get it back in Josh's hands. Brady will just sit there and be like, they're not stopping the run, let's just keep running it. And then instead of like, well, we'll keep running it, but we'll vary it up. If you're getting worked on mid-zone week, he's just going to keep running that. If duo's working, he's just going to keep running duo. Like he will do it from the same personnel, the same formation, the same alignment. And you'll be sitting there being like, here comes duo. And he's like, we're still going to get like 6 yards. And until you prove you can stop it, he's just going to keep doing it. And that makes them so much, I feel like, so much more dangerous this time, because they're not so dependent on Allen to make the plays. And you saw that from time to time under Dable. You saw it under Ken Dorsey. Now it's just more like, okay, like let's insulate him with this run game, with the easy buttons and schematic pieces we can do in the pass game. But it really is the run game that stirs the drink. And obviously that piece from you kind of led off this whole conversation. Like, and I'm in lockstep with you. Like, so much of, for as much as Josh Allen may be the MVP and he is what makes this team go, the run game is what is the foundation for everything for this Bills offense. It's what they're established from. And against Kansas City, you don't want to get into a known passing situation, true drop back type of game against Steve Spagnuolo. Like, you don't want to do that. And you don't want to do that in general in today's day and age in the NFL, but especially against Spags and this Chiefs defense. And with the in-structure passing game kind of struggling at times for the Bills in known downs, and when you got to push it downfield, yeah, that run game is going to matter a lot in keeping them on track. I like that. That whole conversation. Oh, I don't know where. All right, I'll stay with Bills offense versus Chiefs defense just for this. So I titled this point, Beating the Chiefs Coverage Rules. So in week 11, Brady and the Bills, they did a very good job of creating leverage and separation in the pass game with various motions and various releases. We saw stack releases, switch releases, those coupled with various motions. And what was key about the motions is they varied in terms of type of motion, but the tempo and the timing, those paired with the different releases and what they were doing created hesitation and miscommunication on the back end for KC. Now, again, Najee Johnson was in there. Maybe that's not the same level of effect if you've got Watson in this time around. But when you factor that in with how KC operates, we know Steve Spagnuolo, he will wield split field coverages and match coverages like it is a legitimate weapon. And then, like we talked about, he's got the personnel to get creative up front and on the back end. And then Spags utilizes all of it to put offenses into a spot where they truly don't know what's coming post-snap. So tied to that, the personnel pieces and the creativity is how sound they are in their coverage rules, usually. And the Bills used that against the Chiefs earlier this year, and it led to big plays and players wide open. You had multiple reps where sometimes you're motioning from a 3-by-1 into a 2-by-2. Sometimes you're motioning into a 3-by-1. Sometimes you're going from a 3-by-1 into like a tight, like a bunch trips look. Sometimes you're going into a 4 strong. The Bills would do all of this, and post-snap for the Chiefs, it wasn't clear, who's the number 1, who's the number 2, who's the number 3, who's going deep, who's going out, who's going in. You've got some guys kind of running obstruction or like natural interference to open up somebody else. You had multiple Chiefs defensive backs pausing in their triggers and in their drops. And I thought Brady did a really good job that game of giving Allen answers against Spags, aside from just the general, hey, you got to throw with anticipation. Hey, you got to beat the blitz before it gets to you. Hey, you got to figure out where the vulnerability is in this pressure look or this coverage look. There were guys open. The Curtis Samuel touchdown against Kansas City is a really good example. They motion him in. It's a tight trips bunch look. They create a multiple switch releases. Like number 1 becomes number 2, 3 becomes 2. The Kansas City's trying to figure out what happens. Curtis Samuel goes on the out. He's got about 6 yards of separation. He gets the ball, pivots back inside, gets down to the goal line or scores on there. So they did one with Dawson Knox. They did one with Shakir. like it was consistent throughout that game of using Kansas City's rules and preferences against themselves. And that's what can happen when you've got teams who play match or teams who want to play man, and they're trying to banjo, okay, like, hey, I got you, like whoever comes out, I'll take them. But if you got guys who release in a stack and they move in unison 5 yards downfield, and then you're sitting there like, okay, we got to wait for one of them to break. And then if they break a certain way, you're like, oh, that's the guy I take. Psych, one of them's open. And again, Najee Johnson was factoring into a lot of this, and it should be Watson in this game. So we'll see how that plays. But they really did a great job of attacking Kansas City's coverage rules, forcing miscommunication. They even did it a little bit. The big touchdown to Curtis Samuel against the Broncos, where it's that 4-by-1 look. You motion Mac Hollins, and then you send him back. And Pat Surtain thinks, okay, I need to go with Hollins, but I think it's McMillan on the outside. He goes with Hollins. So Surtain slams on the brakes, is like, uh-oh, I need to take Curtis Samuel on the crosser. And at that time, he's already out leveraged, and Samuel is just gone and created so much space. So I think that's like another example too, to kind of a more recent example for folks of, just Brady just using motions, formations, and releases to create leverage, attack coverage rules. They did it a ton against Kansas City, and with a defense that likes to operate with split field coverages, these creative pressure looks, match situations from a coverage standpoint, but also from a coverage tied to a pressure standpoint, you can really put them in hell, and Brady did that in the first week. So I look for that to continue, and if it doesn't, where do the easy buttons come from, or how does the structure develop?
I actually think that's a really interesting point, because that's something I kind of noticed in the Texans game, and I didn't really know how to verbalize it, but I think you hit it on the head. It's the motion into stacks and bunches that really kind of gave Kansas City some problems in the passing game, specifically Shamari Connor, when they play that dime personnel, and they played a lot of man against the Texans, banking on the fact that CJ Stroud is not that much of a runner, which he really isn't. But of course, this is going into, will you play man against this team? But where they struggled was Shamari Connor wasn't exactly the change of direction guy that you wanted when the motion into these stacks and bunches. There's one, I think it's Hutchinson or Mechie, when they motion them from 2x2 into a 3x1, and they kind of run this little end breaker. It's not really like a Mechie. So it's Mechie, and he runs this end breaker, runs right past Shamari Connor. Yep. So I wonder if that's going to be something that the Bills kind of do, because that's what the Bills kind of major in this season in the passing game. It's a lot of the 4x1. They did it against the Ravens a couple of times. I actually think it's been a really nice build off of them. They ran mesh at a 4x1, which is something that they do all the time. But then they ran mesh return on one of the Samuel third down conversions, where they sent them, and then they whipped them right back to the outside, and they got the first down. So I wonder if this is going to be a game where the Chiefs play more zone in order to limit Shamari Connor's change of direction, but also to kind of cut off all the water of those quick timing passes by just having somebody there in the flat ready, or having somebody there to kind of break on the ball immediately, because that's something that the Chiefs, like I said, they're the most underrated defensive back group in the league. They will break on passes, and they're not only looking to separate the ball, they're looking to separate you. Like they try and hit people and to separate them from the ball. So the chess match again between Spags, who is the best defensive coordinator in the league, which I don't think is like, I mean, he and Vic Fangio still running the game at whatever age they are, and some of the best playoff performers in the NFL, going up against the Bills offense that doesn't necessarily have the force multiplier at receiver, but has out schemed everybody this year.
And I think that's like that piece is so interesting to tie back to the first one, because it's like, okay, the Bills have done so good for the majority of the year winning with scheme, especially in the pass game. And when it hasn't worked, Allen does mutant alien unicorn stuff and then plays outside of the scheme and structure and makes a play. But like I always tie it into how much did you put out that first game? How much did Spags come out of that first game in week 11 and be like, we're fine. I got him in the playoffs and we go again. Like how much, or vice versa, does Brady think like, ooh, we won this game and I didn't even pull this out of my back pocket, or I still got this in the clip, like ready to go, or we killed him with this. wait till he sees what I layer it with next time. Like what level is Joe Brady at in terms of going toe to toe with Spags? So to your point, yeah, like I still, I mean, I know what happened with Cincinnati this year, but they had a ton of injuries, so I'm going to give them a pass. I still think Lou Anarumo is up there, especially from like a big game perspective. Like what Lou can cook up is tremendous. And yeah, Fangio, it's so funny how like I feel like so many people were jumping on like to the demise of Fangio, like Staley being bad and then Fangio not being great with Miami. It was like, oh, he sucks. And then he went to Philly and it's like, oh, maybe his demise was kind of greatly exaggerated a little bit. And yeah, you've got this mind with Spags who, yeah, he can just put you in hell in a variety of ways. And he's already seen you once. Is that enough? How much do you have to pivot? How much does he pivot? Yeah, that chess match. Oh, yeah, that's such an interesting side of the ball. Granted, they both are, but I feel like the Bills offense versus the Chiefs defense is more fun schematically than the Chiefs offense versus the Bills defense because it's Spags versus Brady and Allen and how everything ties in. I like that. All right, what do you have for your third and final point?
So my third and final point is one that is very football guy, meathead type of stuff, but it's the playoffs and everything matters. Tackling. Who tackles better?
This was your third point too for, I think, what your points were last week too. Yeah.
Yep. Who tackles better in this game? It's going to be cold. It's in Kansas City. Everything is on the line. You have the difference in a 2nd and 4 versus 2nd and 5 opens up so many different things. Like, I feel like it's the stereotype football's a game of inches, but it really is, especially when it comes to high leverage games like this one. So per Sports Information Solutions, the Chiefs are, I believe, 4th in yards after the catch this season total. The Bills the Chiefs are 3rd in yards after the catch. The Bills are 7th. The first two teams are the Lions and the Bucs, which makes sense. But again, these are two teams that are built to win after the catch. You think of Travis Kelce kind of doing his thing, kind of vibing, and then kind of just like, it's not like he just like absolutely shreds somebody after the tackle. They just kind of just fall off of him.
Yeah.
Like, it's very much like a Hallmark movie, or it's like, it's just, oh no, I've fallen. yes. But even without outside Travis Kelce, it's the Pacheco runs.
Yeah.
It's Kareem Hunt, who is running his ass off for Kansas City. There was a rep he got 11 yards where he forces Al-Shaair to commit inside and then jump cuts and gets skinny through a gap for 11 yards. And I'm like, I haven't seen you do this in like 6 years, man.
I was to say, this is like rookie opening night against the Patriots, Kareem Hunt. Like, he wound the clock back. I was like, oh, and that's like, of course he's doing that now. Like, cause they like another element for them to have, of course.
It's like, oh my gosh, it's from Star Wars. I can't remember what he said. They have wings now. Like, they can fly now. So it's like that. They have Pacheco, who runs hard through tackles. Xavier Worthy can be a pain to tackle because of his speed. It's Juju Smith-Schuster, who if he comes back, when he comes back, will be a pain in the butt to tackle. And I think in the first half of the game, the Bills did a really good job tackling. Of course, the dam kind of broke because the Derrick Henry-ness of it all, of getting hit by Derrick Henry, those 3-yard runs were going to turn into 10. And like you said, like off show, like they had a 75% success rate as a rushing team.
Insane.
Like, and again, the Chiefs offense is so weird because everybody's like, oh, they're really bad. They don't know they can't do anything. Against the Texans, the Chiefs had a 0.08 EPA per carry and a 50% rushing success rate. On early downs, they had a 46% success rate as a rushing offense. This is compared to a 30% on early downs of passing. They can just do this now. And so it's important for the Bills to tackle in this game. You have to force them, because those 2nd and 9s where it's a 2-yard catch, keep those at 2nd and 8s instead of making them 2nd and 6 or 2nd and 5, which opens up so much more of the playbook. And conversely, can the Bills make the Chiefs miss? Can they make them miss tackles? The Chiefs are really good at they're just really good, a really good fundamental defense when it comes to tackling.
Yep.
You know, they don't really miss a lot of tackles. They just, it's hard to say like they're an impressive team by far.
Yeah.
They're 5th in the NFL in terms of least tackles broken. Like they just wrap people up. Like it's very much, I say it all the time. They're the team that every coach is going to go show their tapes of like them making a tackle on 2nd and 2 that keeps it to a yard, or they're on the goal line and they get stopped by a shoestring tackle. It's like, that's the difference between great and elite. And going back into kind of the narrative of this game, if the Bills want to be elite and want to be the team of the AFC, you got to do these little things. And I think the Bills defense is kind of odd where like they'll have great moments.
Yeah.
Like the first half of the Ravens game, fantastic moments.
Mm-hmm.
But they also will have moments where just like, man, you're just small. Like you just get run over a little bit and they miss tackles. And again, if Taron Johnson isn't 100%, you worry about tackling. And you say it from the other side, like you need those Shakir to make people miss. You need Keon Coleman to make people miss. James Cook, who one of the best like bouncers on duo in the NFL. He can bounce those really well. And again, it's about tackling. It's about the little things in this game that are going to separate you, especially when the margins are so thin.
That's a good point. You know, like those fundamental pieces. And tackling, there was an issue for a bit in the Bills, even the first half. I mean, Justice Hill ran through DeMar Hamlin. Hamlin spins down and Justice Hill runs through his chest and breaks the tackle. And then in the second half, they're getting blown off the ball. They're missing some tackles. Also, to kind of piggyback on your point there, or one of the pieces you mentioned, some Bills defensive metrics from the second half against the Ravens. I'm going to start with the run numbers because they're nuts. So 76.9% rushing success rate allowed, which is crazy.
That's insane.
Insane. EPA per rush, 0.497. So basically 0.5. So almost a half point added per rush. Nuts for the run game. Overall EPA per play of 0.358. Success rate overall, 58.6. EPA per dropback, 0.244. Dropback success rate, 43.8. All of those were the worst amongst all defenses in the second half of the divisional round, except for the dropback success rate, which was 5th. And this was in a week where defense was optional for the Lions and Commanders. So you really had to get like worked. And I thought the Bills defense against Baltimore was kind of what they've been for the majority of the year. Like, they're not forcing a lot of stops. They're not forcing a lot of punts. They're not getting a lot of 3 and outs. It's either we're going to turn you over, or we're going to force a field goal, or we'll get tough in our own end and you go for it on 4th down and then we get the stop. But like, you can move the ball in this defense. And we saw it again, especially in the second half. I mean, Derrick Henry was running through him. Hill was running through him. You've got the Mark Andrews fumble. You've got a couple of drops that were spread out throughout the game. You've got the, Mark Andrews drop 2-point conversion. There was a multitude of pieces that were kind of like unforced errors for the Ravens that the Bills capitalized on. And you keep thinking like, okay, well, they can't keep doing that. But the Bills have done that for like a majority of the year. They find this way to just put you into a spot. It's almost like they're literally coaching it. And it's hard. Certain things you can coach, right? We're going to try and punch the ball. We're going for the peanut punch. We're going for strips, so on and so forth. But they just find a way to consistently use turnovers as a means to stop drives. Whereas other teams are like, okay, we're going to, play sound coverage, or we're going to stop the run, which the Bills obviously, like, they're not going by the wayside with those things. But it really is, this defense has become reliant on generating the negative plays. You can get them, though. Like, you can mash them. You can generate explosives. But then they're going to generate explosive. It might be a sack. It might be a takeaway. It might be a big tackle for a loss. And they play this game of, you might get us, but we're going to get you. And they play similar chicken aspect, but just different versus how Spags plays it from a defensive standpoint. And the tackling aspect, obviously funnels into that. It funnels into my first point with Mahomes, right? Like, get to Mahomes. Can you bring him down once you get to him? How are you doing against Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt and against DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce, who, yeah, even though Kelce moves at like a half a mile an hour, guys just like melt off him when they try and tackle him. Like, are you falling into that? Like, can you consistently make tackles from depth? If Taylor Rapp isn't there, is Cole Bishop coming from depth to kind of erase runs that get through the first and second level? All those pieces just get magnified and highlighted. And I forget who said it originally, but it's like most football games are decided. There's like 2 to 3 plays that turn the tide or stem the tide and change it. And I feel like one of those could easily be like, oh, you had Xavier Worthy, but the angle, and he just got by you and it turned into a 40-yard gain, or just that little difference. Those little things are so magnified. That's a really good point. I like that. I have several. No, I'm going to stick with this one. I like this one. I do this. I did the same thing last week too, but I titled this one is just more conversational and pieces of really kind of just what I dove into. I literally just titled this Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and Steve Spagnuolo and Chris Jones. Those 4 people give Kansas City, between the 4 of them, give Kansas City consistently a way to win schematically and individually on each side of the ball. For years, we have seen offensively and defensively great situational play calling, design, sequencing, play off for the Chiefs in big games, especially in the playoffs. Andy Reid puts a defense in hell in the low red zone on 3rd or 4th down, using like the Eagles rules against them from something he saw earlier in the year, and it's a wide open touchdown. Spags doing the same thing against an offense on 3rd and 4th downs. What he's doing to the Niners in the Super Bowl, what he's cooking up, he does that with regularity, like creative coverage spins, pressure looks. And then we've also seen Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones, when those schematic things don't work, Mahomes and Jones are like the get out of jail free card on each side of the ball whenever the play calling or design or sequencing doesn't win for them. Beating the Chiefs entails beating them schematically while also mitigating the individual wins from Jones and Mahomes. I feel like so much of this Chiefs run that we've seen has been, you've obviously got the schematic pieces, but then within it, or even in the absence of that, it's the game-wrecking sack or tackle for loss from Chris Jones specifically to end a drive or game. We've seen it so much. It's 4th and 4, and he just whoops any offensive lineman. It's a quick pressure and a sack, and it's over. Or it's 4th and 2 and 4th and 1, and they run the ball, and he quick swims the guard, and he's in the backfield, and he makes the tackle for loss, and it's over. And you're just like he has been. I think everybody knows how good he is. But he's been Mahomes' equal on the defensive side of the ball in terms of this game wrecker, all-world dude that can just erase anyone and everything. And that, again, like that Jones aspect with the game-breaking sacks and tackles for loss is paired with Mahomes with the back-breaking scrambles or throws in and around contact and just ridiculous things that he can do. And the Bills obviously have beaten the Chiefs before, not in the playoffs, but in the regular season. They've beaten the Chiefs before, and when they have, you tie in those little moments of beating those 4. It's Allen beating Spags' 4th down adjustment this year in week 11 and scrambling for 30-something yards on 4th and 2 for a touchdown. It's him playing above the scheme, him beating Spags' answer. It's the Bills' split field coverage and odd mirror package stymieing Mahomes and Reid several years ago, leading to a game-winning interception where they run split field coverage, Taron Johnson interception, boom. They get another interception against Mahomes with some odd mirror stuff earlier this year in week 11. Like, it's those little pieces of you can either beat them schematically or beat them individually, but usually it has to be both because one cancels out the other usually. If Mahomes isn't on point, Andy Reid is cooking up some stuff and they're good. If Andy Reid's, not in his bag in this game, Mahomes is transcending and he's fine. Same thing defensively. Spags is usually cooking. If he's not, Chris Jones is there to be like, it's all right. I'm going to line myself up out wide and whoop your right tackle, and I'll take care of it. Don't worry, Spags. I got you. Like, it's those 4. So much of this team comes down to, just the relationship that Reid and Spags have and what they're able to do with one another. But then having these all-world guys on that side of the ball with them, like as their running mates and kind of the guys to do their bidding for them. And it just makes them so hard to beat because not only do you have to beat the coaches who are great at their job and beat them schematically with the X's and O's, you also still have to watch out for these individual game records that can beat you at any moment. And a quick little thing tied to this, Andy Reid's Kansas City playoff record with and without Steve Spagnuolo. I'm not saying that Spags is responsible for Andy Reid's success, and obviously Pat Mahomes plays a role, so on and so forth. But without Steve Spagnuolo, Andy Reid was 2-5 in the playoffs in Kansas City in 6 seasons. With Steve Spagnuolo, he's 14-3 in 5 seasons. This doesn't include any of the games this year. 14-3 in 5 seasons, 3 Super Bowl wins, 4 Super Bowl appearances. Just what they have done as a dynamic duo. What Spags running the whole defense affords Andy Reid on offense, and then they each have this all-world game record with them. It's just usually one of those is good enough to beat you. If they get multiple, it makes it even more so. It's so hard.
We talk a lot about force multipliers. We talked about it on this show of Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes being a force multiplier. Chris Jones is a force multiplier. He is someone who elevates everybody else around him because of the attention that he receives. Yeah. And I think that's an important aspect of how important he is and how good he's been in the playoffs. It's you can't double him because Spags is going to draw something up crazy that'll leave an unblocked pressure, which is exactly what the Chiefs did to the Texans. But you can't risk leaving him one-on-one because he's going to absolutely obliterate anybody that you put him up against. I think there was a rep. It was a holding call, I think, drawn on somebody else, but he walked Laramie Tunsil back into CJ Stroud's lap. And it's like, Laramie Tunsil is their best pass protector.
Yeah, what do you do? What hope?
And one of the best pass protectors in the league. What else am I supposed to do?
What hope does anyone else have? Like, where do you go from there?
And again, it's the playoff aspect of it. Chris Jones always goes to a different level in the playoffs. And I think it's not trying to stop these force multipliers. It's you just got to slow them down.
Yep, mitigate them. You can't stop. It's same thing with Kelce for years. It was like, you're not going to stop Travis Kelce, but can you just limit him to like 4 catches for 52 yards instead of like 12 for 150?
Can you force somebody else to beat you? If George Karlaftis has 3 sacks in this game, you're like, okay, fine. If that's how we're going to go out because George Karlaftis decides to turn into Reggie White, perfect.
Yeah, tip your cap.
That's game. Congratulations to you. But you cannot let Chris Jones take this game over, both in the run game and the passing game, because there'll be moments where he just shuts a play down. He can shut drives down where he's just like, all right, there's nothing else happening on this one. Like it's over from that point. And I think the Bills have built this team to kind of manage the Chris Jones. I said it with Derrick Henry lightning bolt. They built the team to kind of be able to manage the Chris Jones lightning bolt or the Pat Mahomes scramble. Like, you have to be able to weather those storms. And you say the same thing for the Bills offense. You have to be able to weather the storms and the punches that are going to be thrown at you in this game. And that's ultimately how the Chiefs beat teams. They weather them so much that eventually Chris Jones is going to get home. Eventually, Mahomes and Reid are going to find an answer. Eventually, Spags is going to keep poking a hole until he gets what he wants. So the Bills have to have a way to weather these storms and not allow poked holes to become glaring ones.
That's so well said. And I feel like that encapsulates kind of, just what the Chiefs are. Like, they're never blown out. They're always, like, obviously, I don't want to speak in complete absolutes, but usually, heavy majority of the time, they're never blown out. They are in the game, and that's enough just to have Chris Jones game wreck or have Pat Mahomes make a play. Or sometimes, now a little bit, it's, Trent McDuffie does something or the run game does something. Like, it's just they do enough to stay close, and then something schematic or superstar individual happens, and it turns the tide and they win. Or it's a blocked field goal against the Broncos. Like, it's something where they're just in it enough to let the coaching or superstar individuals take over. And even though you mitigated it for a little bit, you weren't able to fully kind of separate and take advantage of it. And if they're within striking distance, it's just super vulnerable because of who they are from a coaching standpoint, from a fundamental standpoint, from a schematic standpoint. And then, just having these individual guys. I was thinking about it a lot during when was it during I think it was whatever rep it was where they moved Chris Jones against Houston, where they moved him outside and he just whooped. He ran right around.
Fisher?
Yep. Ran right around him, sacked Stroud. Toward the end, I think like the fourth quarter at some point, when Houston was trying to like tie it and kind of see what they could do. And it was literally just at that point, it hit me like, because Chris Jones has been talked about. He's so good. But I really feel like he's been Mahomes' equal on that defensive side of the ball. So many times Mahomes just does something and it's like, oh my God, he just transcended everything, played above the scheme and made a play. And like you said, Chris Jones does that. Like even like games where he's getting beat up in the run and we know he doesn't want to defend the run. And then it's a 4th and 1 and he just blows up a guard or just shoots through and makes the play. And you're just like, how, what? Like how the play had just like they snapped the ball and it's over immediately because Chris Jones blew it up. It's those moments where he just decides to take over for a play or a drive. And it's that piece of what do you do to mitigate those guys? Can you get away enough from them from a score standpoint where that game wrecking on either side doesn't turn the tide, doesn't turn the tables on you and you're still okay? But then that means the schematic stuff. And it's so hard to beat all of those things, which is why they're consistently in games and why they tend to win more often than not. And it's utterly frustrating in every way, shape, and form.
It's so frustrating because they are the rage quit team. They make you want to rage quit. They make you so frustrated. Like, how did he get a scramble for 11 on 3rd and 10? And he just sticks the ball out right as somebody's hitting him. And it's a first down. How is Travis Kelce so wide open? There was a specific play where I could just like playing Travis Kelce would piss me off. It's a 3rd and 6 check down. They do that little delay. The Vikings love doing the delay with TJ Hawkinson. They did it with Travis Kelce. He gets 7 yards on 3rd and 6, and it's just, you're like, like you want to rage quit the game, and that's something I've talked about a lot with the Bills and specifically with Josh Allen, but I feel like this is more of the Bills as a whole. The Bills, like you said, their defense is built on chaos, negative plays. We'll allow an explosive, but we'll take an explosive back. How they perform against a team that they don't really need to do explosives. Like we don't really have to. We're going to mitigate the explosive plays you get while also getting 4 yards, 5 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards. And it's just, again, this team is built for the jab. This team is built to keep jabbing you every round. They're just going to make you feel it. Make you feel it. Make you feel it. Maybe they'll throw a body shot in there, but we're going to keep throwing a jab. And then as soon as you get tired of that jab, they're going to hit you with the cross. And it's like, oh my God, I forgot they could still do that. Like it's the Mahomes touchdown where he's falling down and throws it to Travis Kelce, who just stares right back up at Azeez Al-Shaair. That's the cross. That's the right cross. And so the Bills have to be able to weather those jabs and not let them become major sticking points.
That's very well said. Yeah, you're just feeling that jab over and over, but it's like working and they're winning rounds based on points. And then you're like, okay, like time to open it up. And then there comes the cross or the uppercut or the hook. And you're like, how did I end up down on the ground? Why is everything fuzzy? And did I lose this fight? And yet it's just in the blink of an eye, man, they can get you. Yeah, very well said. Anything else to wrap up? Any points, thoughts on this game, high level detail, anything you got left in the clip or in your notes that you want to speak on or address before we start to wind down here?
I got to say something real quick about Joe Thuney. Joe Thuney had a bad game against freaking Batman on the edge. Like, Will Anderson Jr. is awesome. One of one. Like, just the stuff that he can do, and Bills fans have seen Will Anderson Jr. Yeah. He is a monster. Joe Thuney's played incredible at tackle.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Season. After moving to tackle mid-season, he's played incredible. I don't think this is the matchup that the Bills would want with Thuney at tackle because he's less susceptible to power, despite being a little he's less susceptible to power. Will Anderson beat him with speed and bend, which is something
dip around the edge, show that speed to power, and then skirt.
Yeah, which is something that the Bills' edges don't really do outside of Von Miller.
Nope.
Where they need to attack in this game, where the hole is right tackle and left guard. Because with Tooney moving up tackle, somebody's got to take his place. And I believe that's Mike Caliendo. Jawan Taylor has been Jawan Taylor this year. Like that those are the matchups that they need to address. But again, the Bills have done such a good job this season of avoiding the catastrophic meltdowns.
Fingers crossed, no jinx.
Yeah, no jinx. But they cannot let this game snowball. They can't let a negative play snowball them. And I think the last game that really happened was like the Texans game, where just everything just broke the wrong way. Josh Allen went 9 of 30. The pass rush was absolutely dominating. Derek Stingley, Kamari Lassiter shut down the edges, and then Nico Collins is Nico Collins.
Yeah.
But what they've done such a good job of is mitigating the disaster and mitigating the snowball effect. They can't let this game snowball, despite how high the emotions will run in this game on the road in Kansas City. You can't let it snowball. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest aspects of a championship team, a team that has been there before, is they don't let stuff snowball. You rarely ever see the Chiefs get rattled. Like they do this. So the Bills can't let everything snowball in this game. And they've done a really good job of it. But that's one of the big things I want to say. They just don't let it snowball.
That's very well said. I think, or I like to think that at this point, like granted, some of the leadership structure from on the field and off the field standpoint has changed a bit within the roster, but this team's been through so much the past several years. And I really feel like all those failures and those scars and like the fires that they've been through have really fortified them to be a team where they don't really get rattled and don't get down. And that's part of the reason they're in close games all the time. Like they don't get blown out. They are able to take a punch. Even that Houston game, it looks like, oh my God, this game's going to go off the rails. And then they claw their way back, and they arguably should have won that game, like late, even with playing absolutely horribly. And granted, Nico Collins went out after that big touchdown, but like they're down Shakir in that game, and they're missing some dudes, and you're like, oh my God, they're getting worked. And they find a way to come back the week after they got housed by Baltimore. Like it could have been easy to be like, oh, this is another one we're going to get housed. And they find a way to just try and scrap back. And even last year, playing against Kansas City in the divisional round with, I can't even remember at this point how many defenders they had out in that game.
AJ Klein was getting serious run.
AJ Klein, the whole piece was he was like on his way to a cruise with his family and then got the call of like, hey man, you want to come back and play football? Like seriously, like this was several weeks before. And so he's like, okay. And so he came back, was practicing and was there. And then, with all the injuries, starts and plays a significant amount in the divisional round. And he does that because granted, he's not the athlete he once was. Dorian Williams is a much better athlete, but Dorian Williams is getting misled left and right like a puppy with a treat on any type of eye candy or misdirection. So they feel it's kind of like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Do we take the athlete who's not ready from a processing standpoint, or we take the vet who's got it all from the neck up, but isn't necessarily where we need physically? And you've got him. You've got Rasul Douglas playing on one leg. You've got Christian Benford out for that game. You've got Bernard out in that game, and you've got Daquan Jones just came back, but he's banged up. There's no Milano. Like there's all these pieces. Milano was an injury concern for this week. He got his knee banged up. Does he play this week? We'll see. Oh yeah, there's so many layers attached to this game in a multitude of ways. And yeah, I don't even want to say what I was going to say because I was going to be like, oh, I don't think anything will snowball, and then watch the Bills get housed like 35-0. But I don't think that'll happen. But it wouldn't be. No, I'm not going to let it seep into my paranoia. But yeah, man, what a game! I was hyped for Bills, Ravens, obviously, and then the schematics of it. But now it's a different level of schematics with this one. And then the winner goes to the Super Bowl. It's these two teams again. It is the Brady and Manning, Pats, Colts of this generation and this cycle of the NFL. And we'll kind of see what it breeds. And I appreciate you taking the time to join me on this run, in this conversation. I very, very, very much hope that we are doing this for a 4th consecutive round, not next Tuesday, but the one after, because there will be a bye. Hopefully we're doing it leading up to the Super Bowl for the Buffalo Bills. But regardless, whether we do, whether we don't, you are awesome, as always. Just in case people don't know who you are, even though they should, because you're pretty much a co-host at this point. Tell the people who you are, where they can find you, what you do, all that kind of stuff.
Of course, you can find me at Acosta32 JP on Blue Sky, at Acosta32_JP on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I am the NFL writer for SB Nation. I am the football writer, so anywhere where there's football being played, I'm probably talking about it. I'm doing a lot of NFL draft work. Starting up this week. I'm going to be in Mobile for the Senior Bowl.
Of course, you're there the year, and then I'm not going. There's so many people that are like going this year, and I'm like, the one year I'm not going. Fantastic.
This is I've been trying to get back since I went in 2022. I finally am able to go. I'm really excited to get in some NFL draft prospects. Got a mock draft I think coming out tomorrow, and I'll just spoil it here. I have the Bills taking Michigan's Kenneth Grant.
Oh, I take it.
Who is a house as a run defender.
I take it.
But follow me, see what I'm doing, see where I'm going.
You are awesome. I will be DMing you after to say all these things again and to thank you for your time. But again, multiple weeks in a row, crushing it with the content, making yourself available. I appreciate it. I know a lot of the folks were pumped to see you again for this episode. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Again, we went almost 2 hours this one, so another little marathon. Technically, we did do 2 hours because we talked offline for like 12, 13 minutes before we launched. Technically, it counts. It does. It counts. You're awesome. I appreciate you for the work that you do and the person that you are. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. I'll see you on the social. Thanks for stopping by. You crushed it.
Of course. See you.
Later. Mr. JP Acosta, tremendous as always, taking the time to stop by and join us here on the show. Speaking of tremendous as always, One Pie Pizza. The best pizza in Buffalo, New York. I don't say that because they sponsor the show. They sponsor the show because I think they are the best pizza in Buffalo, New York. Sweet sauce pie, cup and char pepperoni, homemade blue cheese, a great cheese to sauce ratio. It's not like you're taking a bite and the cheese is coming off. Everything is layered very well. If you get different toppings and veggies, they'll chop them all up and sprinkle them evenly so you get a good, even distribution of flavor and taste. They have a pizza named after the Cover One brand, which is absolutely delicious and tremendous. They also do a whole bunch of catering foods, breakfast pizzas. They do these mac and cheeses that are awesome, like a whole bunch of varieties. They really good salads, if that's your type of deal as well, to go along with pizza, get some health in there. And then to tie it all together, a lot of initiatives and drives for the city of Buffalo, for the community to make it a better place. Toys for Tots, partnering with the Alzheimer's Foundation, SPCA, partnering with Roswell to try to knock out cancer. They do a lot of good for the community in addition to providing tremendous food on top of it. So get yourself some One Pie Pizza for the playoff game Sunday or Saturday or any point at any time. You will not be disappointed. Again, online menu can be found in the episode show notes, whether here on YouTube or whichever podcasting app or platform you are listening to this show on. Want to grab this comment from Pops, who said, why is Dwayne Carter not playing in the playoffs after playing all year? I think for me, it's just his level of effectiveness, especially with how teams are going to want to run the ball in the playoffs. His biggest issue at this point is getting displaced against the run, especially versus double teams. He's getting blown off the ball. He's getting displaced horizontally and vertically. You're just not seeing that level of effectiveness against the run. And then you're not getting the pass rush juice or pop to kind of mitigate it or balance it out. So I think they just went with, not that, Jefferson's a huge upgrade or even Phillips or Austin Johnson are a huge upgrade, but I think they've given you a bit more than Carter, who at this point is just kind of not even a rotational body. I think he's more like a defensive tackle 5 or 6 at this point. Doesn't mean he can't get better, but I've spoken a couple times on this show. I think he's largely been ineffective all year, which is unfortunate. He had a good game against the Texans, but he really wasn't able to string more pieces together. Had some flashes here and there, but I think they were few and farther between. And just with this aspect of the playoffs in general, wanting a little bit more maybe, or expecting teams to run a little bit, having a different type of skill set to round out the roster, especially on the interior. I think that's what they went for, but who knows? Maybe he'll play this week and suit up. We will see. I'm going to throw up the banner. This is Toodles, folks, because we're going to start to wind down here on the show. If you have not already, please, and thank you, drop a like on this video. Likes are the lifeblood of these streams. They go a sincerely long way towards helping myself and the entire team to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. So please drop a like on this video here on YouTube. Turn on notifications for the Disguise Coverage playlist here on YouTube. Subscribe to the Cover One channel. We have you covered pretty much every single day of the week with various levels of Bills content here. If you are listening on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, that's cool too. Please rate and review and subscribe. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever your poison is on the audio side. Ratings and reviews, subscriptions, all I'm falling apart. All of those are greatly appreciated and help myself and the team and the show to track and trend in a variety of ways. So thank you if you have done that. If you plan on doing that, thank you. Whatever form or fashion your support comes in, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who joined myself and JP live on this episode. If you didn't join live and you're watching later, listening later, whatever have you, thank you very much for your post live, listen, view, download, whatever have you. Thank you very much to Carl and Jason for your super chats in this episode. I appreciate you guys being here pretty much every single week. And then also the, donation on top of it. That's awesome to see. I greatly appreciate it. Ooh, big week. Appreciate the kind words coming into the chat. Appreciate you, Pops, as always. Pete, thank you very much. Yeah, appreciate you guys. Thank you very much to JP Acosta for riding with me for the third week in a row. We'll see if we can continue to do this going forward. If the Bills do advance, might kick around some bonus episodes with some other potential guests. So that might be in the works, but we will see what happens. Big week, big game. Savor it. Enjoy it. Bills down to the Final Four again. Chance to go to the Super Bowl, and then a chance to win the Super Bowl. Vanquish the Chiefs in their own house. Finally get past Kansas City in Kansas City and get over that hurdle and that hump. We'll see what happens. Enjoy the week. Relish in it. This is still, even though it's, could be disappointing if they lose, it's still awesome to get to this point and just be in one of the Final Four teams and in this atmosphere. And we'll see if it can lead to more. Enjoy the week. Enjoy the content. I appreciate you folks. Tell your family and friends and loved ones about this show. If you enjoyed this episode, if you enjoy the content, if you hated this show or hate the content, tell your enemies and try and ruin their day by making them watch this show. I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Be kind to one another. Take care of one another. If I have anybody watching or listening who lives in California, my thoughts and prayers are with you. I hope you and yours and your possessions are all in as great of shape as can possibly be. I will see you tomorrow or in the next episode of the Film Room, depending on whenever you're watching this and whenever you watch that. If not, I will see you next Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern. Actually, no, the Film Room will be on Tuesday next week. Disguise Coverage will be on Wednesday of next week. So I will see you for the next episode of Disguise Coverage. But until then, Godspeed. And as always, go Bills.